Well, for the past 4 weeks, we've been going over these themes of Advent. They're very traditional. It's always nice to sometimes go back and check them out again. And as we've been doing this, I've been trying to take a look also at like what is the opposite of, because sometimes I think we can't really understand what we're trying to get until we understand like what is the opposite of it, and is that something that affects us. So we talked about hope, the opposite of hope. We all kind of said despair, maybe depression, right? The opposite of joy, sadness. Opposite of love, that one's pretty simple, hate. But now this one I thought was interesting. I sat there and I wrote a bunch of words down, and I think I've contemplated enough. But as you would think, what would you say is the opposite of peace? Chaos, turmoil, war, discontent, trauma, tension, conflict, stress, hatred. That's the one I landed on. Is that Catherine? Okay, yeah. I wrote a bunch of stuff down because you do that, the opposite of peace. The first one that always comes to mind for me is just war, right? That seems like a normal thing. But then there's all this other stuff. Chaos was one I actually kind of sat with and wrestled with. But I realized that I think, especially when it comes to Christmas time, but also other times of the year, anxiety is something that really affects us a lot. And I think probably coupled with that, I'll just tell you my struggles so that maybe if that also is your struggle as well. I know for me, one of my struggles is that my perfectionism leads me to a lot of anxiety. And I think if you've known me for a little while, especially when it comes to Christmas, I know for most of you, if you've been with me, I try to always, every year, craft the perfect Christmas Eve worship service. And to this date, I still have not experienced it. I've come close. I think there's been times I'm like, that was, and I'm going to be honest, last year was probably one of the closest that really got me. But my perfectionism and my worry then started leading to anxiety. And when you have, is it possible to have peace when you are just thoroughly anxious? I don't know, it's almost, is it impossible? I think it even might be. So if we have the anxiety, then we're not going to experience the peace. Yet all through Scripture, peace is something that God promises his people. The Old Testament word is probably a word that you've heard before, shalom. And that means peace. And again, it's not the absence of chaos or conflict. It's this holistic viewpoint that everything is all right with me, and that especially my relationship to God is not one filled with anxiety, because God has granted us peace. In Isaiah, we hear of the Prince of Peace. When we do Silent Night, first verse, final words, sleep in heavenly peace. So peace is, so as we talk about what are some things for you, I wrote it down, some things, I want to make sure I get them. What are some things for you that causes you anxiety in general? Work? Yeah? Work-life balance, right? Like, am I working too much, but I need to pay some bills? Or am I working too little and... Yeah, holiday seasons, how do we balance all those things? Yeah, those are all really challenging. Oh, thank you, Mike. You are awesome. That hiss was killing me there. Yeah. Right? Yeah, that was fantastic. What else brings us anxiety? Uncertainty. Now, the uncertainty piece I find interesting because there are a lot of things that cause me uncertainty. For instance, for me, I'm one of those weird people that I get a little bit anxious when I don't know where I'm going. Now, that's both literal and metaphorical. When I dating Heather back in college, I would be getting ready. We're going to take her out onto a date, right? And when we go on this date, I need to be at peace. There's going to be a lot of things that happen, so I need to be prepared. So I would normally go to my computer, and then I would hop on to MapQuest.com, right? And then fire up the dot matrix printer, and I would print out the directions. And this is how bad I had it. I would actually pre-drive the route so that, because I was like, I need to know where to go. Like, what does it look like? What is it going to be like? Because I want to know where I'm going. But then also, is that also true for other things? We want to know where we're going even in life. Do you have anxiety when you don't know what the next phase of your life is going to be? Yeah, maybe you recently got engaged, and maybe you recently got fired. Maybe you recently had a medical scare that's causing you to go, what's going to be next for me? Maybe you're aging. There's lots of these things that cause anxiety on where are we going to go. Other things. Yes. And that one, I'm gonna break that one down because I think that one's a big one. I think that comes out in two ways. Number one, raise your hand if you are a control freak. I don't believe that. There's more control freaks here than that. I'm sorry. Yeah. Some of you are like, I'm scared. Are you going to yell at me? No, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm a control freak too. And the reason why I'm a control freak, let's be honest, I'm going to do it better than most other people. Right? Isn't that why? Let's be honest. I'm not saying that arrogantly, and I'm not saying that it's actually true. I just think that in my brain, that why have someone else do it when I can do it and I can do it better and I can do it in my own strength? So when I am at the mercy of someone else who's running something, I get a little bit anxious because I would rather be the one that is in control. And then, of course, I think with that is, to me, the biggest thing, which is we're scared we're going to fail. Are you scared of failure? I think that causes tons of anxiety. Now, when you start thinking of the Christmas story, you start seeing people who should be experiencing a lot of anxiety. Mary. Should Mary be experiencing some anxiety? She has an angel show up. The angel's like, hey, you are highly favored. Hey, just so you know, if an angel shows up and says, Melissa, you who are highly favored, I'm like, just run. Like, nope, wrong, Melissa. That's not me, because something bad's about to, because then the angel's like, hey, you're going to be pregnant. And she's like, I don't think that's how it works. And the angel's like, yes, it is. And this is how it's going to happen. And what he said made zero sense. And then she says the most mind-boggling thing in the world. I am the Lord's servant. May it be done. I would be like, hold on a second. What is this going to mean for my future? What is this going to mean for my fiance, Joseph? I think he's going to be upset. My parents, they are not going to be happy about this news. I would be filled with anxiety. Joseph, right? You think you found the right girl. She's sweet, she's nice, she seems great. Now she's pregnant. She had some weird, stupid excuse that it was God that did it. And you're thinking to yourself, man, I thought I knew this girl. Where am I going? I'm out of control. This is a massive failure on my part as a guy. And then in comes an angel and tells him it's all true. And Joseph marries Mary and raises Jesus. All throughout this, I always get fascinated when people in the midst of chaos or turmoil or trauma or anxiety, when they can have some peace. So what we're going to be doing today, Psalm 29, we're going to be seeing if we can discover maybe how to get some peace and where to find that peace. I mean, you already know some of the answers, right? Is finding true peace, being able to figure out your path between here and death and knowing all of the details of your future? No, okay, we already know that. We still fight against it, but we know that. Do we find peace in having our own strength that we're going to be able to handle everything that, again, got to say it, please. I've seen it on Facebook just recently. God will never give me more than I can handle. That is a lie straight from the pit of hell. That is no joke. Nowhere in Scripture does it say God will never give you more than you can handle. God does say God will never allow you to be tempted beyond what you can handle. But routinely, God gives people way more. Do you think Mary is going to be able to handle being a young woman giving birth to the Son of God, the Messiah, God in the flesh? She can't do it. Joseph can't do it. God is going to routinely give you way more than you can handle. Because if you could handle it, then why would you need God? So making sure that we can, and then also failure. I'm going to give you another news flash. You are going to fail sometime between now and your death. Probably a few times. Yeah, probably a whole bunch of times. Some of you are planning the perfect Christmas. It's going to be great. I know I'm trying to plan my perfect Christmas, trying to hope that the worship service goes great. Some of you have asked, Jacob's not coming home because he's doing that whole stupid pastor thing, so he's got to preach on Christmas Day, so he's got to work. So not everyone's around, so it's tough, but I'm still going to plan for it. Guess what? Probably something's going to go wrong. Maybe some potatoes are going to get burnt. Maybe some dogs are going to keep us up late at night. Hopefully it's nothing big and bad like, putting a turkey into a thing of hot oil and things exploding. But you're going to fail, and I'm going to fail. So if we know that that's not where do we get it? Where do we find it? Now, and you already know that answer too, right? Where do we find true peace? We find it in God. Now, Psalm 29 is going to help us understand a characteristic, an attribute of God that brings about peace. And it might be something you weren't expecting. Psalm 29. Here we go. I'm just going to read through it and comment as we go along. Ascribe to the Lord, O mighty ones. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. It's always a good refresher course when it comes to Hebrew poetry. It doesn't rhyme. It's not going to, have all these wonderful ending things. But Hebrew poetry comes in these couple of forms. And in Psalm 29, we're going to get a form we normally don't get. Normally, Hebrew poetry, you give a line and then you say like the exact same thing, just maybe in different words. Like, I am excited for dinner tonight. I'm thrilled to eat supper, right? I essentially just said the same thing twice, right? And then you can have it where it's the antithesis. I'm excited to eat supper tonight. I will not go hungry because of dinner, right? So it's the opposite. And then we get this form that we often don't see, which is, they call it like the magnifying form. It's where you say something and then you magnify it even more. I am excited for supper tonight. The yummy foods that I shall feast upon with fork and knife will fill my belly and my heart with joy. Do you see it? So you take something and then you amp. Psalm 29 is almost all of this amplification. Of course, I hate ascribe to the Lord. What does that mean? Like give honor to, give glory to, like who's the one that is responsible? God. So God, I'm going to give to you. So ascribe to the Lord, O mighty ones. That's a terrible translation. It should be, O sons of God, which is actually either A, angelic beings, which I don't think it is. I think this is actually a slam against all of the pagan gods of the world. Remember when Moses comes and they're going to take Pharaoh through a 10-step process of, getting the people freed, and there was 10 plagues. All those plagues were a direct attack against another god. And so what he's saying is, hey, all you little gods, all you things that think that you're in control, ascribe to the Lord glory. And you know who is the worst god you and I worship? Ourselves. Because I need to know where I'm going. I need to have enough strength. I need to not fail. You know what, Mark? Stop talking about yourself. Start thinking and ascribing to the Lord. Now, again, quick little note again on Lord. Is Lord in all uppercase? Yes. Take a quick scan through that. Is the whole thing, is there a bunch of capital L-O-R-Ds all through it? Yeah, there's only one verse that doesn't show up in, and it's the middle verse, verse 6. We'll get to that. But this is all about God's personal name over and over and over again. Give glory to the Lord, O mighty ones, all you little gods. Mark, knock it off. Ascribe to the Lord. Stop trying to manufacture your peace. Stop trying to figure everything out on your own and start learning what it means to say, God, you are in control. Mark, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. Because that's what it all comes down to. Eventually, I've got to say, who am I worshiping? Myself? And when I worship myself, I usually get a lot of anxiety. Because it's all about me. And it usually fails. But when I say, God, I don't know where I'm going. I don't have the strength to do what I'm doing. And I feel like a failure. God says, I can now come and give you peace. Because now you know where to find that peace. So ascribe to the Lord this. And then he goes on and he's going to be talking about some weather patterns. For those of you who've never ventured outside of California, California shows up in verse 6, okay? But for the rest of it, it's going to be something different. I have never experienced a tornado. I've never experienced a hurricane. I'm a little jealous. Jacob, my middle son, now in Florida, he got 2 hurricanes already. I'm like, he's experienced. Who here has experienced a hurricane? Anyone? Oh, really? Oh, okay. How about a tornado? Oh my. Okay. Is there anything else? I mean, and then of course earthquakes, right? Okay, yeah. So earthquakes. Let me tell you. Here we go. Verse 3. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord thunders over the mighty waters. Do you see it's just this amplification? So if there is a worldwide flood, is God not in control? No. In fact, when we go back to Genesis 6, God caused and helped direct that. Sometimes there's also chaos over the waters. And that's what we read in Genesis chapter 1. And what happened? The Spirit of the Lord was hovering over the waters, bringing peace out of chaos, bringing order out of anxiety. God is greater than anything that you are going through. You may not believe that, but it is still true. God is greater than anything you are going through. And it might be hard, and it might hurt, and you might not know which way is up, and you might be swirling around in this ocean, bobbing up and down in this vast sea of nothingness, but God is always and forever will be in control. And he sees you, and he knows you, and he loves you. He is greater than thunder and lightning and mighty storms. Now we get to something that sounds a little bit like a tornado. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks in pieces the cedars of Lebanon. Now, again, I've never experienced a tornado, but I have watched Twister several times, and I think that's a pretty good rep. I have not seen the new one. Is it good? Is it better than the original? The original was so good. So, yeah, I've got to... Wait, was it? What? It was cheesy? Oh, my gosh. Is it true to life, though? Because that's what I think a tornado is really like. Is that not what a tornado is really like? I don't know. I thought it was wonderful because I saw things snap, trees, cows getting picked up. Do cows get picked up? Yeah, yes. Yes. Okay. See, there we go, Twister. Yeah, download the poster. Yeah, I tell you, the tornado. So when God sends wind and its power, is God more powerful than a tornado? I mean, even like, I guess an F5, that's the big one. I know that because I watched Twister. Again, swirling chaos. And I've heard stories, and I think they're true, like pieces of straw will actually embed themselves into wood because it's going so fast. It's like these projectiles. And sometimes, again, that's how we feel, right? Everything's swirling around us. We're getting stabbed from every single direction. And yet God, not even God, God's voice is stronger than all of that. God's voice has incredible power. Again, as the Spirit is hovering over the waters and it comes time for God to bring creation into being, what does he do? Does he get out his engineering plans? Does he get out certain ways to map everything out? No, what does God do? Speaks. His voice creates. There's other things that God does when he speaks. With his disciples as they're huddling in that upper room and they're freaking out and Jesus is gone and they don't know what to do and they're scared because the people of the nation are now coming against them and they're going to be hunted and they're going to be killed and destroyed and they don't know what to do and they just wasted the last 3 years of their life and everything is in chaos and Jesus shows up and what does he say? Peace be with you. How powerful was that voice? It was so powerful that they took these 11 scared, huddling masses of blubberness and turned the world upside down because of what happened. He also has something to say about you. He does not say, I want you to do everything. He does not say, gosh, you failed again. Wow, didn't see that one coming. Boy, you have major problems. No, what does he say? He says things like, you are my child, and I love you with an everlasting love, and I know that things are difficult, but I've already proclaimed the end to death through my death. And he says, I want to be with you forever. That voice is more powerful than anything. You're starting to see something, and I'll just put the cat out, let the cat out of the bag. We can experience true peace by knowing God's strength. We often don't think about that. Normally we think of peace and we think of, Jesus leading beside us beside still waters. We love that, right? We got these little lambs and there's this meadow and there's waters and it's peaceful. But that's not all of our experiences, is it? Because sometimes we're in the midst of chaos and turmoil and difficulty and we wonder, is God even seeing us? Does God even know it? Can God even rescue us? And the answer is yes, he can, because he is more powerful and stronger than anything that you are going through. And that's where you're going to find peace. Let's keep going. Verse 6, we're now at the middle of it. It took me a while because I had to research this, because I first read this. I'm like, I don't know what this really means, but did some research, found it out. Pretty exciting. Verse 6, we're in the middle of it. This is what he says. He makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. Do you have a text note on Sirion? Mount Hermon, yeah. So most people believe that these are two Mount Lebanon, Mount Hermon. And he says, I'm going to make the mountain skip like a calf. And I'm like, that doesn't make any, how can a mountain? Now, first of all, again, if you want to, you should, because it is kind of fun. Google calf skipping, or, animals being let out, or because, right, they're like the cutest. Make sure there's good music behind it that's like, almost like the Benny Hill theme. It's really, really cute. I did that. I loved it. How can a mountain skip like a calf? I mean, you're talking about shaking something massive. This is, in fact, larger than any earthquake we've experienced, even bigger than the Northridge earthquake that we've experienced. I'll never forget the time that I was just sitting in my job, and as I was sitting there, I was like, oh man, I do not feel very good. And I'm like, I'm feeling kind of woozy. And then I look around and I see everything is shaking around. I'm like, oh, that's why I'm feeling woozy. And I'm looking up at the lights and they're swinging. Let me tell you, experiencing an earthquake, that's why it's always fun whenever I go somewhere else. And they're like, hey, I can't understand you people in California and why you would live there. Earthquakes are terrifying. I go, yeah, in some ways they are, but if you're not at the epicenter, you're probably going to be fine. Well, what if you're at the epicenter? Well, you're not going to be fine, and it's going to be terrifying and difficult. I'm like, I don't think I'd live through a tornado or something. He's like, with tornadoes and tsunamis, at least we can get some warning ahead of time. You guys with earthquakes. Yeah, when you are having everything shaking around you and your feet are not planted firmly on the ground and you are thinking nothing is going well for me, and we might feel we're out of control, the answer is you are correct. You are out of control, and guess what you can do about it? Absolutely nothing. You do not have the strength. You do not have the ability to stop an earthquake, but you can find peace in the one that is stronger than all of that. He goes on, the voice of the Lord strikes with flashes of lightning. The voice of the Lord shakes the desert. The Lord shakes the desert of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord twists the oaks. By the way, I have to do this. Do you have a text note on twists the oaks? Yeah, makes the deer give birth. Yeah, those sound about the same, right? Twisting oaks or Bambi being born, like that doesn't really make any sense, does it? What is this? Yeah, I'm going to have to side with that. It is true. Hebrew is a funky little language. It's got all consonants, and then we provide the vowels based on context. But again, if I read to you, the voice of the Lord twists the oaks and strips the forest bare, does that make sense? Or does the Lord make the deer give birth and strips the forest bare? Yeah, I don't think the second one really fits, does it? So I'm sorry, it's not about Bambi getting born or anything like that. But I guess that would be kind of weird, like the earth is shaking and all the mama deers are like, ah, and then they give birth. I guess that could kind of work. But no, I think he's twisting these oaks. Everything is swirling. Twisting an oak? I mean, have you just thought of that imagery? Like, could you twist? Like, I can't even grab a stick off my tree and twist it. Imagine twisting an oak tree. I can't. I don't have the strength. I don't have the ability. I'm going to fail if I even try. But you know who can? God. His strength can provide me with peace. And in his temple, all cry glory. The Lord sits. I think that's funny. He's sitting. He's not standing. He's sitting. Why? Because he's in control. He has no concerns. He has no worries. He's not looking at your life and saying, wow, they're really in trouble and I have no idea what in the world to do about it. No, he sees it and he knows, and he's sitting enthroned over the flood. The Lord is enthroned as king forever. When we start thinking about ourselves, I heard a pastor say this convicted me, maybe it'll convict you. When we as people think about our anxiety and how we have to be in control, we have to know where we're going, we cannot fail, and we need to do everything right, this is what he said. He said, we all become temporary atheists. Now, that's a little harsh, right? But I mean, isn't it true? When you end up in situations that are beyond your control, is your first instinct to go to God? Now, if it is, that's amazing and that's wonderful. I have found that many a times I don't do that. And then usually I sit and spin in anxiety, and I go over and over and over again. How am I going to solve this problem? What am I going to do with this? How am I going to solve this financial problem? How am I going to solve this difficulty that I'm facing? What if I end up failing? What's the worst thing that can happen? Someone's probably going to die. And I just go out of control, and I become a temporary atheist. Until usually then, I stop and I realize my anxiety, and I go, what am I doing? And hopefully that's when you return back to God and say, God, you are greater than any storm I'm facing. You're greater than any hurricane that I'm experiencing. You're greater than any tornado that's twisting me up. You're greater than any wave that's crashing over me. When we go back to God, we ascribe to him the glory. And when we do that, we will find that God's strength gives us peace. Because let's face it, sometimes God needs to shake you off your path. You are going the wrong direction. And a storm comes, and now all of a sudden you're facing a totally different direction, and you feel like you need, and you know what? Sometimes you need to get lost. Sometimes you need to get disoriented so God can come in and say, I'm in control, and I love you, and I'm going to provide you peace. Sometimes God's going to have you fail. Oh my gosh, this happens to me so often. You have no idea. I come up with great ideas for how to lead a church. I come up with great ideas on how to do certain things. And so many of them, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And all of a sudden it's a failure. And then I sit and I spin and I wonder what's going on. And now I just failed. And I turn into a temporary atheist. And then usually someone reminds me, hey, Mark, have you been praying about this? And I go, shut up. Don't tell me stupid things like that. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. I should be praying. And then I stop. And all of a sudden I start praying about my difficulty and my failure. And you know what happens? What happens? Peace starts coming through. I think sometimes we need to fail, and then sometimes we need to face things that are way beyond our power. All of you will. No one here is going to escape the clutches of death. None of you. It's going to happen. And let me tell you, that can be very anxiety-inducing. I often think about that and I get really worried, like, what is it going to be like? I mean, no one's gone through it and then come back and told me like what it's like. I know I have Jesus and he's died and came back to life, but he didn't tell me like what are some of the mechanics? I need to like kind of know the way, like give me some more details. And God's just laughing. Mark, I've already conquered death. It is not anything to fear. And let me tell you, I've been around a lot of people nearing the end of their life. And though it causes me some anxiety, I have never been in the presence of a Christian at the point of death and they have anxiety. They just know. They're ready and they trust. I hope today that you find some peace. Some peace of understanding what it means to be lost sometimes. Peace, understanding what it means to let go of you trying to control a situation. And maybe, just maybe, we, like Mary and Joseph, can just simply say, Lord, whatever you want, you're in control, and I worship you. I pray that your Christmas is filled with a lot of peace. Turn to God and his strength and let him fill you with the peace that passes all human understanding. Let's pray.